Hello, my name is Brooklyn Lou, and I'm an atheist. Been about an atheist for about 10 to 12 years now. Former evangelical Christian, living my best life, happy, and trying to expand my voice here on YouTube. So if anyone wants to chat, come on in. Gonna hang out a while, see if anyone wants to talk. All right, today I was hoping to speak with some people who came out of Christianity like I did. Right, hoping to find out what your story is. You know, how it began, how you became a Christian, and then maybe how you decided to get out. And most importantly, what's your life like now after you got out of Christianity? So, would love to hear your story. I'm going to relax, drink a little Monster Energy drink, and wait to hear from somebody. If you're on YouTube and catch this, I'm posting the link to come right in and speak with me live right here on the channel. You could also comment in the chat room. I'll see that as well. But I prefer to talk to people live. It just is more personal. It's more friendly, and it's a little more human. But I'm free to talk in chat too. Just hoping to find someone who wants to share their story. You know, my story is one of being a Christian for many years. Right, I didn't grow up in church, but I was familiar with Christianity, but gave my life to the Lord when I was around 25 years old. Lived many years as an evangelical Christian. Drifted away after starting to study different disciplines like evolution, like psychology. And when I did leave, was transitional, but I got to a point where I was much happier and still am. And that's been quite a while now. I find the life without God a lot more simple, a lot more free, and a lot less complicated. My mind is clear. I have more peace of mind. And that's been my personal experience. But of course, I want to hear about your experiences. So if you're out there, don't be shy. Come on in. Let's chat. And even if you're a Christian, you can come in and, you know, free to share any of your life's experiences as well. I just like to meet new people, and I like to interact with people. You know, I'm home a lot. I'm an older guy, don't have to run around all that too much, so I spend a lot of time at home, and it gives me a reason to keep my mind active. Being on YouTube is kind of fun, and the lives I really enjoy because I really enjoy interacting with people who are like-minded, and also people who completely disagree with everything I'm thinking. So either way is fine. Be right back. Give me a moment. I'm going to hope someone joins up. There you go. Tenebris. Well, now I could stay. Tenebris Sint. How are you? Yeah, not enough Holy Spirit, but that doesn't matter. I want to hear from people of all types, particularly people who are either thinking of leaving a religion or Christianity, and also people who might have left. I want to know their stories, how their life has been since leaving. And of course, I'm always open to talking to Christians because I find them fascinating, and I certainly spent enough time in that world to understand a little bit about it. Kind of wish the Christians had more Holy Spirit, right? I'm okay today. Getting fully recovered from a surgery I had about 3 weeks ago, but I'm feeling a little bit better, a little more energy, and enjoying life a little more right now. Tenebris, I've seen you around in some of my streams, but I'm sure I've seen you in some other streams as well. I don't recall where, but I'm trying to make the rounds, get my channel out there a little bit. So I don't know where I've seen you, but I've seen you a few times in some chats. Ah, the Zealots Den. And I know you, my friend. How's my Catholic friend doing? Very nice. Either one of you fellas, Tenebris. Zealot, this was my dad's hat. Okay. And my dad passed away about a year and a half to 2 years ago. And I inherited his hat. Didn't wear it for a long time, but I've been wearing it all the time now. And it's fun. It's fun. So if either one of you want to pop in, here's the link. I'd love to talk and keep it light. I don't want to get too serious today. There's a link. You know, my dad was Catholic, by the way. Not sure about when he died, though, because he kind of changed a little bit when he got really, really old and sick. But he was Catholic almost his whole life, maybe up until the end, but I'm not sure. But he was in the Knights of Columbus as well. You're doing some work on the computer? Ah, Tenebris, that's where I've seen you. I've seen you. I must have seen you in there. That gets wild in there. He gets like 1,000, 2,000 people listening to those debates. It's quite astonishing, really. You know, Zealot, I think I might have told you one time on your channel, I was Catholic when I was young because my mom and dad were Catholic. My mom just passed away about 3 weeks ago. And she was getting the communion over at my house right up until like 2 weeks before she passed. The local church was coming over with a Eucharistic minister, and a woman would come by and do the communion. I always respect people's beliefs, even though I don't hold them. Okay. So, yeah. On here, on YouTube, I get to be more free with my expression, because most of the time I'm actually spending time. When I do spend time with people, they're almost always Christian of some sort. And me being an atheist, I tend not to talk because it's like politics or religion. It gets really complicated real fast. So I kind of don't talk about it much. That's one of the reasons I started this YouTube channel, because I wanted to express my thoughts more freely and not so personal, where I know the person, and if I say something wrong, I might really hurt them. All right. So, people like you online, I don't think you mind if I say something that's against your religion, because I think you're on here for the same reason. You're not going to take it personal, right? Someone claimed to be God. That's a new one. Although I did hear someone on another chat saying they were the Messiah. I heard that recently. Hey, SPC Cave. Nice to see you here, and it's been good chatting with you. That last discussion, I would love to talk to you about that. You know, I really would. I can be real calm. Maybe we can go point by point and at least express, different feelings about that issue. All right. Definitely something I've given a lot of thought to. And the subjective and objective morality is something I really gave a lot of thought to, you know? So, Tenebrous, wanted to ask you, with the deconstruction zone, how did you get involved with Justin? I mean, I seen Justin maybe about a few months ago is when I started following him, and I love the deconstruction zone because it's a straight up, biblical debate type of thing, and he's got a nice script, and it works really well. And I love popping on there when he's on, and he's not, certainly on a lot. But how did you get involved with him? Yeah, I know SBC Cave. I know you're not an atheist, and that's perfectly fine. Right. You know, it brings up an interesting thing. I like variety. So sometimes I think if everyone all thought the same, it would be kind of boring, Like if you met people and they all were the same personality, it would get really boring. So I don't mind people having different beliefs. Kind of makes things interesting. My favorite Pope, Zealot's Den, was the last John Paul. I don't know, I don't remember if he was John Paul the second or the third, but the last one before the European guy came in, which I actually didn't like very much. Right? And I like the new guy, the new Pope. Yeah, John Paul II was Pope a long time, and he seemed to be a very reputable individual, and I respected him. Yeah. Who was it that came after John Paul II? Wasn't it like a German guy? That ended up like leaving, which is very unusual. If I recall, he just ended up kind of just leaving. Benedict. That was the guy, Benedict. It was unusual when Benedict just left. It was the first time I had seen that. Yeah, one thing I like studying a little bit about is when the Judaism and Christianity, they're different views on the Messiah. They kind of like that. And Justin actually takes like a Jewish approach to the Messiah, like I'm sure you do as well, you know. So I tend to actually go along with the Jewish position of the messianic prophecies. You know, there was that comedian Lewis Black, and he did a routine where he was talking about, you know, the Jews knowing their own book, you know? And I think there's some little validity to that too. You know, I mean, that's the book that they wrote and lived by, so I think they know something about it. You think Benedict was in the Hitler Youth? He may have been. I don't know. It was kind of weird when he came in and left. Hey, I happen to like Paulie, by the way. Zealot, I want to tell you a story because you probably relate to some of the gangster stuff, maybe. When I was young, I lived in New York. I knew some gangsters, you know, not like famous ones, but people that were in the family. And I had a friend that I grew up with, and his father was divorced from his mother, and he lived with his mother. His father would only come around once in a while, right? But his real father was one of the characters that was portrayed by Joe Pesci in Goodfellas. You know, that guy who was really like crazy and nasty. That was an old friend of mine's father, but I never met him or anything. But he was his real father, you know. But he had a different last name, and his mother, you know, moved on and got remarried, and his mother took care of him. But his actual father was one of those guys. Zealot, you seem like a guy that I would have grown up with. You know, you seem like a regular guy from, you know, I'm from New York, and you seem like you would be like from that area. You know, I think you're a lot younger than me, but you're the type of dudes I used to, you know, hang out with in Long Island, New York. And Tenebris, do you know the Bible really well as far as the Old Testament? Are you someone that's you know, really well read on that? Yes, Boston. You know, I got a little affiliation with Boston, and that is my girlfriend is from Colombia, and she came over from Colombia in the 1980s, and she settled into a town right near Boston, a small town, and that was like the first place that she lived was in the Boston area. And then she got married, had a daughter. They moved up to Florida. I ended up meeting her about 8 years ago. We're both divorced, but she learned how to speak English in that area. When she came, she didn't know any word but pizza was the only word she knew. But she's bilingual now and ready to retire, actually. So Tenebris, you pretty well on the prophecies, the messianic prophecies, like Justin gets into all that stuff. Zealot, I'm just glad that we could be friendly, being you're Catholic and I'm atheist. So that makes me feel good, right? Because certainly we don't believe in the same things. Hey, look at the trees. How you doing? Haven't seen you in a while. I hope things are well. You still out there in the woods? Hey, I got a question for you, Zealot, just out of curiosity. On the political spectrum, are you more on the liberal side or the conservative side? Wow. I hope it wasn't too much snow. You know, Zealot, I've met Catholics on both sides of that, political spectrum. Um, a lot of really devout Catholics uh, are very liberal on social issues like charity and giving to the poor, and they want a government that's responsive to the most needy of us all. And then the conservative ones have a different approach, I think. You know, I mean, also in the Catholic Church, I'm familiar with Catholics that really reach out to the illegal immigrant community. It's been a big thing in the Catholic Church for many years. Right? I lived in a small town before moving to where I live now, and half the people in the town were Guatemalans and many illegal immigrants. And the Catholic Church there was very foundational for them, you know. Well, SBC, yes, I think that Catholic radio is really big on abortion for sure. I used to work on a radio station in Florida prior to my atheist days, prior to becoming an atheist. And I worked for a very conservative, kind of radical conservative talk show host who was very Catholic. And I used to run these commercials and half-hour programs for Father Pavone, the abortion right to life advocate. And then later on, Zealot, I heard on your show someone talking about him, but he was defrocked. And I don't know the whole story. But when I was running his stuff years ago, he was actually not defrocked. But apparently he did something wrong. You know, one thing all of you should know, I used to be Christian and I used to be very conservative as well. And I've completely done an about face. I used to work on conservative talk radio, not as a host, but as a writer behind the scenes. and as a producer of a small show that was super conservative and actually very Catholic as well. But it was broadcast on Christian radio, but we would run Catholic programming as well. And but the talk show host was an extreme conservative, right? And now I'm the opposite. So I've come a long way and have changed my minds a lot. Yeah, the guy I used to work for and with on the talk show host made Rush Limbaugh look liberal. It was very radical, and I didn't believe or agree with everything that he said, but I used to write some of the monologues, that he would read on air, and always very, very conservative. We were anti-gay marriage, just everything straight along the line conservative. I went almost, I went to the left of mainline Democrats, and I used to be to the right of conservatives. So I kind of tend to go to these extremes, and I don't know. I could say that my atheism led me out of conservatism, which is kind of the way it went for me with politics and religion. When I was very Christian, I was very conservative. After becoming atheist, I kind of moved away from the conservatism and became much more liberal in my thinking. And I also have a bit of libertarian in me as well, like a lot actually, but I'm like libertarian to the left side, but I'm really big on freedom. So that on Trump being a Catholic, you know, Catholics tend to think of Jesus as being for the poor, right? And Trump seems to be the opposite. So I'm wondering how can you like really be for Trump when he doesn't do anything for the poor or the downtrodden, you know? SBC Cave. Now I'm a capitalist, uh, but I do believe in social programs, probably a lot more than many people today. So that in a way I can be considered socialist, but not in a way that you know the right would hammer me on, because I'm not a socialist. I believe in American democracy, and I believe in capitalism, but I think capitalism has to be checked, and I do believe in having good, strong government programs to help the needy. So that's where I stand, but not a socialist like in a pure sense, but some of the conservatives today would call me a communist, but I'm not because labels are just thrown around. You know what I'm saying? Hey, SBC, thanks for stopping in. I do want to. I'll comment on your last comment on the in writing. The last election was crazy because I was on, I'm on the left. I'm not for Trump at all. In fact, I think that Trump is destroying our country right now. But I was considered, a lot of people, when I expressed my political views, I was called a communist a lot. All right. Which is kind of really, really extreme and crazy, because my whole life I've lived in America. I was born here. I worked here. I've never liked anywhere. I mean, I always was American. I rooted for America. I always was American. But politics made it so extreme, one side or the other, where I was called a communist often. So I think people throw these words around. It's like they don't always fit. It's just like they throw it around, like you're a communist, you're, this and that. My dad was in the Korean War. Persian Gulf War, I remember. I mean, I wasn't alive during the Korean War. I was alive during Vietnam, and then, on through. I mean, Zealot, I got to ask you this about Trump. We're watching Trump with Elon Musk, who is not even in the government. But he's, completely destroying people's lives right now. Right. And I mean, is that acceptable from a Catholic perspective, to just have someone destroy people's lives? I mean, look at all the layoffs. These are people's careers. This is the way people sustain their families. And they're just mercilessly cutting them, just firing them. All right. And, then also the illegal immigrants, Now, of course, we don't want criminals running the streets. I mean, I don't want that, and I'm on the left. But I value a society that cares for other human beings. And when you have a society that is just running around grabbing people off the streets and splitting up families and destroying lives of innocent people, even though at the same time they're getting some really bad people, I don't like it. Yeah, when I was young, the Vietnam War was alive and well. I mean, that was the first war I remember. And my brother and sister are older than me, so they were more in that age. My brother was in the age where he could have gotten drafted, but he didn't. And he ended up passing away really young. I mean, maybe that's why he never got drafted. He went to college and he got killed when he was in college, but it was during the Vietnam era. All right, Zealot, you have a good one. Tenebrous, how did you become an atheist? How did that happen? Were you an atheist kind of naturally, or were you a religious Jewish person who believed in scripture and then became an atheist? And Tenebrous, the thing when you say US is wasting trillions on people, well, I mean, we all know that the government is wasteful. So I wouldn't argue that the government's not wasteful. All right. But these are real people, right, with real families. All right. You know, when when your father comes home and he's the breadwinner and he's providing for you and your father's son, and he just gets fired because they decided it was wasteful. Okay. All right. This has real life application. All right. Real life application. And, wasteful, the government is wasteful in all kinds of ways. All right. And I don't think these rich oligarchs are going to crack down on things that are wasteful uh, in their behalf. In fact, I think they're voting in a new tax cut for the richest of the rich, which enables them to get richer. Right. Now, yes, I think there's a way to get rid of some waste. I think that is true, but it's not just to just start cleaning everything up, destroying lives. All right. I can't see it. I mean, I can't see it. I mean, the thing just happened. It happens at corporations too, not just the government. But they were talking about 200,000 people the other day being laid off, government in the government. 200,000 people. Right? That's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Did you leave your faith, your Jewish faith, quickly, or did it take like a long time to figure things out and deconstruct it? Yeah, it usually is slow for people who think deeply, because you're brought up a certain way, you have a certain way of thinking, and to deconstruct that my experience with talking to other people who've done it, it usually doesn't happen overnight. You know, it usually takes a little time. Right. The As a Jew, did you take, the Old Testament scriptures very seriously at one time? So that when Justin from Deconstruction Zone is speaking, he's almost always speaking about Old Testament, because I guess that's his area of expertise, right? Were you more, really into that, the scriptures, or was it a little more cultural? You know, when you say Jewish deist, aren't most Jewish people in America kind of in that category? Because I know, like, there's so many Jewish people that I've met through the years that weren't really the Orthodox Jewish type, but more like an Americanized Jewish, right? I didn't meet, growing up, too many Orthodox, like Hasidic or really, really deeply religious Jewish people. It was more like culturally Jewish that I met a lot of in New York. So yeah, I've seen Tovia Singer, and I like the work he does. And it's a funny thing because I don't believe in God, so um, definitely don't agree with Tovia Singer on that. But I love to see Jewish people talk about the Bible and the Old Testament with Christians, because I find Christians to be very, very, very confident on the way that they interpret the Old Testament as everything pointing to Jesus, right? And it's nice to see somebody who has a different perspective and can at least debate with them, you know, because it's at least coming from a purely biblical perspective. Whereas if a Christian talks to someone like me, all right, I'm not a biblical scholar. I know the Bible okay. I'm pretty good with it, but I'm not a scholar, someone who's really well studied like Justin is or Tovia is. Right. So I like to kind of watch those types of discussions to learn. And as far as I could tell, Christianity is filled with novices, right? It's filled with people who really are overconfident in their ability to understand these scriptures because they're taught something, and indoctrinated day in and day out, and it just fills their head. And I like seeing them talk to someone who's Jewish and understands, you know, the Jewish Bible. It's kind of fun. Now, when you were growing up, did you encounter evangelicals like who tried to, you know, uh, preach the gospel to you? And if you did you find it persuasive or was it just like an annoyance? Yeah, Christians are it what when I was young it wasn't quite like it is today, I think, but Christians today in the modern evangelical type Christians, um they really don't even know their Bibles that well, but they're super duper duper confident, like they got it all figured out. And it's like it's a strange thing to me, like how confident they are. And then they really don't read their Bibles, really. All right. It's more like they just hear sermons, and they hear sermon after sermon after sermon and commentary after commentary. And then they feel like they know their Bibles. That's why I find, like, I don't know, what Justin does is just kind of picking them apart, biblically, and it's fun to hear for someone like me. Now, on Isaiah 53, um, as a Christian, I used to think that was, Jesus. All right. Uh, because all I would see is, suffering, because we always were taught Jesus suffered and died for our sins. So just hearing suffering was like, oh, Jesus. The light bulb goes off. It's like Jesus, all right? But now I think that it was, at least the author was more talking about Israel, you know. But Christians, when they see Isaiah 53, they're thinking Jesus. Do you actually know how to read like Hebrew, or you just use like concordances and stuff? By the way, when I was Christian, we used to go to a Passover feast. That was Christian. Right? It was like a Jews for Jesus type of stuff, and we would go once a year to have a Passover, but it was all based around Jesus. So, there's that whole movement, the Jews for Jesus, and I don't know, there's different messianic Christians and stuff like that. Yeah, yeah. But you see, when you're debating the Bible, it kind of doesn't matter if you win a debate on the Bible, because I find it all comes down to a belief anyway. I mean, people just believe what they want to believe, you know? Like when I listen to Deconstruction Zone, I mean, there's so many people come in, they, get beat up in a debate. But I wonder, does any of them really change their minds? Because I don't think they really want to know what is true. I think that they just, are perfectly content in what they believe. And I think that that's what's so difficult about debating the Bible, or, I mean, there's a vow that people take. And when you take that vow, you're it's like your life is on the line. Like, to say something bad about Jesus as a Christian is like just the worst thing you could ever say, and I equate it to like joining a motorcycle group, a motorcycle gang. I mean, when I was young, I had a friend who joined an outlaw motorcycle gang. He was a criminal, ended up, he's in prison for life. But at the time, he wasn't. But he had to make like a vow unto death. And that's what like religious people do. They make a vow unto death. So even if you're being beat up biblically or intellectually, it doesn't seem to matter, right? And that's what I find the most frustrating thing. Winning a debate doesn't mean anyone's mind is changed. Yes, yes. But isn't it just like arguing, with a wall? I mean, I guess once in a while somebody might change, but I don't think many do, right? It's like maybe if you have like 1,000 people get beat up in a debate, maybe 1 out of 1,000 might actually change one day. It just seems like a very small percentage. You deconvert some Christians? Now that amazes me. That's amazing to me, honestly, because I don't know how you do it. Is it purely through the Bible? Right? And what are they deconverting to? Right? It's not Judaism, right? Are they just leaving Christianity? Isaiah 48:20. I got to remember that. The thing is, if they see a passage and they realize they had been wrong or interpreting it wrong, or that they were told something wrong, um, where do they go from there? Where do they turn to? Because I find that when people deconvert, it can be very traumatic psychologically, and unless you like reach out to something else, it can leave you kind of empty, if you know what I'm saying. So do like a lot of them deconvert to like a general spirituality type of thing, where maybe they just believe in something, some sort of first cause, but they don't name it anymore, that type of thing. Now, are you meaning that the Jewish heaven is for even people like me who are atheists who don't believe in, Jehovah? You know, it's kind of like once you understand, some of the passages you're quoting and some of the concepts, um, it's kind of like it's kind of a weird thing that happened with Christianity and Judaism. It's kind of like they just kind of borrowed, most of their beliefs and just tacked on another series of books. You know, that's why I've seen like Tovia Singer kind of describing it as an insidious thing. Like they kidnapped Judaism. I've seen him talk in that type of language. They just took it over. Changed it into something else for the followers of Jesus, right? And do you have any thoughts on if there was a real Jesus, who he might have been, or do you think it was purely mythology, or do you have a concept of what Jesus, uh, what he might have been? So kind of like a legendary figure, a real person that became legendary, or do you think it was like a fake person? Yeah, that's kind of what I think happened. I don't pretend to know, because if I'm asked about that, I'll say I don't know, but here's my opinion, because I don't want to be stuck, because I really don't know. But my best guess so far is that he was a real person, um, probably a rabbi, and led a movement, a new religious movement at the time. And I do think he probably was crucified. I I think he probably was put in a mass grave. I don't believe anything about these tombs. The tombs things doesn't do it for me. But I think that he probably was put in a mass grave, and then legend formed around him. And like any religious cult type movement, it grew and grew and grew. And that's kind of the way I see it. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the Trinity, as a Jewish person, you never thought like there was a Trinity in the Old Testament, right? It was purely uh, Shema, or however you pronounce that. It was purely one God, unity, one, not a triune thing. Yeah, that's kind of what I've thought about. The mass grave makes the most sense to me, you know, but I don't know. You know, it's just my best guess. And I definitely don't buy this tomb thing. You know, the Joseph of Arimathea, I kind of think that character is made up. Right? It's just kind of how I'm interpreting it. I don't think there was an actual guy who was a rich guy who said, you know, you can use my tomb, right? Because that's pretty much the story, right? He says, you can use my tomb, and then they put the body of Jesus in that tomb. All right. None of that makes sense. I don't think there was ever a Joseph Arimathea. I don't think. And I do have a biblical question. All right. In the book of Genesis, just in the very beginning, you know, when it says, let us make man, you know, let us, all right. Christians think of that as the earliest part of the Bible that would point to a Trinity, because there seems to be God talking to somebody. All right. Do you have a take on that? Like, what was that? You know, let us. Was God just talking to himself? Was he talking to something else? That Mary Magdalene, I kind of am fascinated with that character, right? In that there always was this thread going around, and I'm talking about in the late 60s and 70s, because I'm an old guy. I don't know how old you are, but I've been around a long time. And there always was this thread or thought going around, which was always crushed, by the church. And it was considered completely heretical. But there always was this little thought that Jesus had a thing with Mary Magdalene, that they had some romantic attachment, right? People really believed that. I mean, even I remember people believing that in the 70s, right? But it was always tamped down, no, that's blasphemy. Well, Elohim is plural, right? That is a plural. Um, Now, do you have any thoughts on prior to the Bible, prior to Genesis, um, who was Yahweh? See, I've kind of went along with the idea. Again, I don't know, but it makes sense to me that he was one of a group of gods in that Canaanite pantheon, and in that you have El and Yahweh. So I've kind of went along with that thinking, although I don't, it doesn't really matter to me. I'm an atheist, I don't believe in any gods anyway. But I'm wondering what you thought of that, coming out of Judaism. Where did Yahweh actually come from? Now, you must have heard of what I was just referring to. I'm wondering your thoughts on that. You know, El as being part of a pantheon in ancient Canaan prior to the Old Testament, and Yahweh becoming the God of Israel, and then God Almighty. Because I see like that being in the Bible. At least I can read into it being in the Bible, you know. Yeah, so you're kind of along my way of thinking that Yahweh came out of a group, and then Yahweh became the God of Israel and God Almighty and the one God, which is purely a Jewish thing, right? That's the way I've seen it. You know, the Jewish thing is purely monotheistic, you know, and Yahweh or Jehovah is the God. And then they kind of make El and Yahweh the same God, right? But I've always thought, after, you know, doing research I've done, that they were at one time not the same God. So if you have any information on that, let me know. They're worshiping El, the bull, the golden calf. But obviously, Christians don't see that as, you know, their God. They see that as an evil God, right? I mean, they see the golden calf as pure idolatry. Mm. So basically, you're saying that these gods became one God in the Old Testament, and that became the God of Israel, who later became the God of everything, right? You know, in the religious thought anyway, became, you know, God Almighty. There is no other ones. Right. Another thing that always strikes me, and I don't have enough, you know, knowledge about it, but it always strikes me that all this, you know, if you could look at what was going on in Israel back in ancient times, in Canaan, and these ancient Mideastern cultures, it always strikes me that Jewish people, Islamic people, and Christian people seem to think that that was all that was going on in the world. And we know that not to be the case, right? There were still people in India, there were people in Africa, right? But they weren't even a part of this whole thing, these particular God thing going on in the Mid East. And that in and of itself leans me towards the atheistic view, because it's so cultural, right? I mean, it's like the temple when they talk about in in the Bible. When you read about it, you're thinking of this amazingly grand thing, and I don't think it was. It was kind of these were areas that were relatively small if we were to look at them today. All right, and there was all types of cultures, native Indian cultures, and they knew nothing of the God of the Bible, and they had their own version of God, or what they thought was God, the nature religion, the pagans. All right, and when religions get so exclusive and people just think they know it all, and they plant their feet firm on only one way of thinking, I just think they're missing so much of what was happening, in these times on the earth. Right. See, that's, we agree on that, they weren't the only people, you know, and the other people outside of that area in the world and on the earth, they had nothing to do with all that. And it seems like religious people, they just ignore, it's like they ignore entire cultures and entire societies that existed as though they were nothing, and I find that peculiar. It's like just thinking about it, it's like living in America. You have an American flag. You can't get anywhere else. There's no airplanes, there's no nothing. All right, there's no phones, there's no technology, and all is America and the American flag, not realizing there's a whole continent of Africa, and they may think entirely different than you do. All right, but then as time goes by, you go, no, it is only the American way, there is no other way. And that's kind of what I see religions doing. It's like taking one particular region and just saying that's it, there was nothing else. And it doesn't seem to work that way. You know, there was other people. You know, there still are indigenous people, which is quite amazing. You know. Yeah, as far as I know, and again, you know, I don't have these degrees and stuff. I have a high school education, but I do, you know, I do study stuff, and I read the Bible, you know, when I was a Christian. But it seems that humanity seems to have come out of Africa, you know, and then moved out from there. You know, so certainly if that's the case, there was a whole culture of people in Africa that never heard of, you know, Jehovah, Jesus, any of these figures, you know. What you know now, do you think that Moses was a real person? And, you know, do you think he wrote the Torah? I don't, but, you know, coming from a Jewish background, um, did you used to think he wrote it? And do you still think maybe there was someone named Moses? Israel. Right, right. I'm not a believer in the Great Flood, you know, but I guess you probably know that from me being an atheist. I just, you know, I think the whole story of the flood is completely mythological, you know, is my take on that. I mean, it's kind of a ridiculous story, right? All the animals in the world, two of each kind, going on a boat built, you know, by a 480-year-old man. You know, I mean, that definitely, I think mythology when I think of that story. Yeah, yeah. I kind of see it the same way, Tenebris. I kind of see it the same way, but I don't claim to know any of this. The weird thing as an atheist, you don't really have to know this stuff, right? To defend your position, right? But I find this stuff fascinating. So I'll try to learn, you know, after leaving Christianity, it's kind of like I'm curious what really was going on, right? I'm curious, but I don't really need to know, because I just don't buy the whole God thing. But it's nice to read about because it's fascinating. Well, where did these stories come from? Why did they come up with these particular narratives? Who may have wrote these narratives, right? It's interesting. Hey, Celtic Spirits Coven. Nice to see you. There's a way where the Bible becomes more interesting when you're no longer religious about it. You know, it becomes more interesting looking at it from a cultural or sociological perspective. You know, you don't have to hate the book, even if you're not religious. It's just you have a different way of looking at it. The one thing I've thought about, and I do find it fascinating when I read like the New Testament, like Paul's writings. I'm thinking that this man wrote this stuff 2,000 years ago. And I think he must have been a pretty brilliant guy. I do think that. I think he must have been a pretty smart man. All right. He didn't know, anything we would know today. He had none of the knowledge that we have today, and in having the benefit of all the things we know today. But writing that stuff back then, he must have been a pretty smart guy. Oh, and as an overall, who do you think is the one who really is the most pivotal person in Christianity? And we know, Jesus, who, was legendary or whatever. We kind of see that. But I've always thought that Paul was kind of the catalyst to Christianity. The one who was most important in spreading this, new religion around in the early days. Yeah. Yeah, I kind of see that too. And there's stuff about Paul, as far as I can tell, there's not all that much known about Paul, right? And there's a story that we really like valued when I was Christian that I now just have my doubts about Paul. And it was this idea that seems to be taken from the Bible, but it's little sections, it's not much. But there was this idea that Paul was running around killing Christians, that he was, murdering them. And that was like a big deal in Christianity, because here Paul, the apostle, he was killing the Christians. And then on the road to Damascus, he had this experience. And even he, a killer, became whole and holy and all that stuff. But I don't know at all if that ever happened. I now tend to think it didn't, but it just seems like a wild story, right? He was running around killing the Christians. And it's very little, I think, to document that other than the scriptures themselves, and I don't really trust the scriptures that much. So. Tenebris, did you read the New Testament as well? Coven, do you have no soul? I don't think I have a soul. Yes. Tenebris, that's exactly what I see. I see the Christianity of Jesus as being very much obey the law. If you just took what he seemed to teach. And Paul's teaching was more about this grace and faith type of thing. But that's just, what I see now. And Tenebris, I want to ask you, after all this deep conversation, after religion, after you left like that behind, how has your life been? Have you been content, mentally stable, feeling content with your life? So you must see that whole new covenant thing where the old is no longer applicable as just being really, really cheap, right? Hey, Gio, glad to have you. I was told and used to believe, not that, like I said, I knew for sure, but when I was evangelical, it was like the teaching that Paul was killing Christians, murdering them, or like on a campaign to do that, and now I don't really see that as being something I would generally believe anymore. But it was important in my circles of Christianity. In fact, I named my son Stephen Paul, and I named him that because I named him after the Bible story of Paul killing Stephen, and Stephen forgiving Paul. And that story was very important to me at the time. So I named my son after that, Stephen Paul. At the time, I was evangelical Christian, so it was like, it meant the two distinct people becoming one in Christ, right? That's where I got the name from back then. Geo Sam, a cradle atheist? That means you're atheist, but just just starting to rock a little bit. Yeah, I don't believe in a soul, but I think that the coven is into like a spirituality where the soul is a concept that's very important. But I tend to be stone cold on those things. All right. I don't believe I have anything other than my physical body, and my brain is the most important thing in my life. And my brain does create thoughts that become who I am and my personality and all that. But I think that's all product of the brain. I don't think there's something, inside of me that flies away when I die. You wouldn't be giving up anything. Give it to me. You can have my soul, Celtic. You could have it because I don't think it exists. Hold on right now. I'll be right back. I just got to check on my dogs. Hey. My dogs were howling like wolves. Celtic, when you actually have no belief in these things don't have value to you. Okay. And I understand, people have different spiritual concepts, but like for someone like me, you can have my soul. Right? The devil can have my soul. Okay. I can blaspheme the Holy Ghost because I literally don't believe in them. So, it's a little different. A lot of people, they're not sure. Like, can I say something bad about God because that's, they were brought up and that's all they ever knew. And somewhere deep down there, they're like, I'm not sure about myself, but I'm sure I'm a stone cold atheist. So I'm not worried about anyone taking my soul. Geo, I don't believe in anything supernatural either. Right? I don't know how. Can you tell me, Gio? There's one thing I would really be curious about. When you say you're a cradle atheist, I really want to know the stories of people that are kind of new to it or coming into it or leaving a religion. Like, I know my own story and how I came about becoming like an atheist, but I'm not a cradle atheist anymore because I've been an atheist for quite a while. You know, and how did you become an atheist, and are you comfortable there? That's really important. I think that you're comfortable. You didn't take it, I gave it. There it goes. Wow. Gio, that's not common in America anyway. 5 generations of atheists. Were you ever a believer in any gods? I know Norway tends to be a very secular country. I've heard that. Gio, I'm curious why you call yourself a cradle atheist. Oh, wait a second. I think I'm getting it now. I think I was confused. So you've been an atheist your whole life. You never believed in any gods. Hi, Jesus is the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Welcome. And you are welcome. I never was a Christian according to the Bible. I was fooling myself. If that makes you feel good. Gio, can I ask you, being you never were into, religion and gods and all that, do you look back on your life and think you missed out on something? Or do you think that it was better off that you didn't go down those roads? I can see the debates coming now. Jesus has entered the building. Oh my gosh. No, in Tenebris, I agree with you. Um, Biblically, I mean, Old Testament, Jesus was not king of anything. right? But you know that Christians coming from a different a different idea about that. Jesus is King of Kings. You're mad at God. Hey, Jesus is King of Kings. I don't want to call you Jesus because you'll think that's blasphemy. Oh, gosh. Boy, I love this. Tenebris, you're going to get along well with Jesus as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Because he thinks that Jesus is found in the Old Testament, starting in Genesis 3:15. Gio, where do you live now? Tenebris, isn't it ironic that Jesus is King of Kings and Lord of Lords comes in the room and is actually speaking of a lot of the things we were talking about a little while ago? I am from Staten Island and now in Arizona. Wow. Have you lived in the States like for how long? Your parents were from Norway. Were you born in the United States? Yeah, I was born in Brooklyn and come from Brooklyn, but I haven't been there in 35 years. I live in Florida now, but people say I still have the accent. Oh gosh. Oh, so Gio, being an atheist, someone that doesn't, believe in God, never did. You weren't brought up that way. Um, your life seeing, you know, these different religions, and particularly, Christianity being the major one that we see here in the States. Um, did people like try to preach to you through the years? And how did that go? Were you ever like actually contemplating, like, oh, maybe this is true? Or was it just kind of always like a preposterous thing to you? And Gio, what age are you? Like, how long have you been, you know, in this country where we have a big religious presence? I put that stream again, that link, because if anyone wants to come in and talk on the screen direct, I'd be happy to do so. Oh wow, Gio, you're my age. I'm 62. And we got some old guys in here today. Sure, you can come on in. Hey, how you doing?
Well, hello there, Brooklyn Lou, right?
Yeah, nice
Well,
to
it's
meet
nice.
you.
Oh, I was going to say the same. So, yeah, nice to meet you.
You know, I've been talking to a lot of people online because I got very active after the political stuff in America, and I've kind of wanted to have my voice heard, like really for the first time, because I'm a pretty private person. But the people I speak with, I don't know if I talk to anyone that was like a lifelong atheist, because in
Oh,
America, what we see is people that become atheists a lot. You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
like they were
Hmm.
in different religious groups and then maybe change their mind. So
Hmm.
you're coming from a totally different perspective, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's not by choice.
Yeah.
It's just the way it's been. My parents were from Norway, and they weren't raised with religion. And there's only one generation that's here in the United States, and that's my generation. My sister and my father's kids, that this generation is here. All the rest are in Norway. So I was born at a time where if my parents were citizens and I was born, I am a citizen because of the nature of them being Norwegian, both being Norwegian and me being born from them. But they don't do that any longer. So I have dual citizenship, and now people can't get that anymore, which is something that I guess I was lucky, but I didn't really know anything about it until I got older.
Do you still go to Norway?
Well, yeah, I have a passport. I've had a passport since I was a kid because we used to travel back and forth for different things. My grandmother died, and we went to Norway to see her off, to bury her, and I went there, and then I was there for an uncle's, that kind of thing, like family events. But yeah, and I also have family there, so it's part of my plan that I have for in case things get out of whack. I have a place that I can like leave the country. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm wondering if that might take place one day.
Well, I
You know?
don't want to. Believe me, I don't want to
Yeah.
leave. I don't want
Yeah.
to leave. I have too much invested here to just pick
Yeah.
up and leave.
Of course.
But if need be, I'm gonna save my ass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So never being religious, um, do you feel you lived a happy life? Like, because what I get from, and I was religious a long time, so I'm very different than you, you know. Although we're at the same place now, I don't believe in God. I haven't for about 10 to 12 years. But I come out of religion, right? And most people that are in religion, I mean, they feel like they have something special, you know, that they have this peace of mind that other people don't. All right. And I find it the opposite. Like, I find personally I have more peace of mind now not being religious. All right. But I'm wondering, in your life, would you find yourself stable minded, you know, generally?
Um, yeah. I mean, I'm not conflicted in what I think or believe. You know, I mean, we there's a lot of things about an atheist position that are the same as a theist position. You know, I mean, I wonder about the nature of the universe too, as everyone else does. But is it worth wondering about? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I there's a lot of things I don't know for sure, you
Right.
know, but
Yeah, but
I'm a
it
lot
doesn't.
more comfortable saying that now, you
Well,
know, like,
that's an important aspect of people's lives, being able to be honest with themselves and say they don't know. You know.
I agree.
Yeah.
Right. Because when you just say you know and you really don't, kind of just lying to yourself, and that causes some little problem, you know,
Right. Yeah.
because you kind of, you know, you kind of know that, you know, am I just lying to myself here, you know?
Well, you say it enough and it becomes truth, you know? Say it enough times. You know
You
that
feel
saying?
better about it.
But see, I've never had to deal with that kind of thinking because it just wasn't in my life, you know? But that's part of the disconnect that I have with the country is like all religious and most of my friends were religious. I didn't know it. I wasn't aware because we didn't talk about it. We didn't talk about it much, you know? So that's this my disconnect is not knowing their side, being brought up with religion and having that in your life is like I don't have anything to compare that with. So I have to listen to what they have to say because I see a lot of the harm from the outside looking in. I see the harm. It's really apparent to me, but it might not be apparent to people who are experiencing it or who are in it, who are experiencing it. They might not see that as harm, but if you look from the outside in, there's no mistaking it.
Like, do you have an example of something like that? Like, where you might be friends with
Sure.
someone and you see something that's like, wait, you know, this must not be a good thing for them, you know?
Well, there was certain thing people have certain rituals they have to follow because of their religion and they also make up things in order to appease their god in their own way and they have their family do it and they have their relatives do it and they make people conform to things, you know, so they're pushing people to do things they don't want to do, so you're kind of like, you know, oppressing people without even
Mentally,
knowing it. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That's that's kind of what I feel, you know. Like,
It's
I
a
feel now that I'm not religious, I am much more free in my mind, you know, and clear, like more clear. I can see things for what they are, not what I want them to be or make believe them to be, you know.
well, that's a great way of thinking. That's a great way of looking at it too. Because there's someone, Bertrand Russell. You ever hear of that guy? He's a
Yeah, I
mathematician.
certainly have heard of him. I've never studied him, but I've heard of him
Well,
for
you
sure.
should anything associated with Bertrand Russell, you should try and absorb, take it all in. You know what I'm saying? Because he was a very wise man. He knew a lot about about the world. So, you know, I'm a big fan of Bertrand Russell and his things, because he was into set theory, and he turned set theory on its head. And we're still wondering what things are because of that. We still don't really know what things actually are because of that.
Now, do you know when he was living?
Oh, Bertrand Russell, he was like
Yeah.
there in the 30s and 20s, I think.
So like he passed away maybe about 70 years ago or so. Something like that.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure of the whole thing, his whole
I,
history.
I know a lot of atheists, speak of him. I've never like read him or, studied his work or anything. But I
Well,
know he was, like a very well-known atheist thinker.
yeah, I'm trying to look at my notes. I have a few notes. Yeah, he's come up with a few things. Like he's come up with the a 10 commandments for life, like not an atheist but a secular guide that's like 10 commandments for living your life. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but
So he might have been very influential in like secular humanism and
oh,
that
for
type of
sure.
thing.
Yeah, for sure.
And is he the guy who came up with God of the Gaps?
No, that's just a term given to the way apologetics use their argumentation to place their God
Yes.
within the space that science can't know. Like
Yes.
science, like there's a gap in science that we're trying to, you know, reconstruct to fill it up with science, right? But
Right.
they just throw God in there without any
No, I know.
provocation. They just stick him in there.
No, I know that. But I'm saying I wonder I knew there was a guy who came up with that term like that
Oh,
that
I don't know I think it's called entomology. I don't know the entomology of that. If that's the word.
yeah, no, I'm actually referring to that term, God of the Gaps, was first used by somebody. I thought it might have been Bertrand Russell, but I don't know because
Could
I didn't
be.
study much about him.
No, it wasn't him. It was someone else in the 19th century, a Scottish, some Scottish guy, Henry Germond. He coined the phrase "God of the Gaps,"
Yeah, that's
and
yeah.
He's not that well known because
No,
I don't
no, he's
know
not.
I don't know who
Like
that
I don't
is.
think I've ever heard of him. Bertrand Russell I've heard of.
But Bertrand Russell, yeah, he's a powerhouse. He had a mind like you wouldn't believe, and he was ahead of his time. There's a video you could watch about Bertrand Russell, his message to a future generation. If you look that up, Bertrand Russell's message to the future, it's a very interesting video. Very interesting video. So yeah.
Now, do you have any community? Because this is another thing I see. Like when I was a Christian, I had a community built in, right? Because
Right. Yeah.
people who believed and went to the same church,
Mm-hmm.
you kind of like looked after each other, and it was kind of like a group community type thing. Now, as an atheist, I don't have such a group. All right. I just
No.
live my life, and and that's
Right.
it.
Right.
And I don't feel like a need that I need that. But I'm just wondering, did you ever find like community outside of, obviously never being religious? You know, did you ever find community that might be like what religion has?
um. Well, since I've lived my life without religion for all of it up until right now, no. But I have found outlets not religiously connected that gave me things to do, places to go, people to meet, a way
Right.
to connect with people. Had nothing to do with religion, though.
Right. That's
It
what
was
I have now.
yeah,
I
yeah.
still, I still communicate with people. I still do things, but
But
there
it,
is something
but it's all built on
attractive about having a
well,
close knit, like tight community type thing. Um, that's the one thing I would say could possibly be beneficial to some people.
right.
Some people don't, I don't think even need that, you know, but for some people, it might be an important thing,
Well, it's
and
good. I think it would be good to have, but I think it should be a secular thing. So
oh,
anybody,
yeah,
no matter what their religion, what they believe, can come and be part of the community.
yeah, and participate and have some sort of support mechanism outside of, let's say, government or,
Yeah, and religion shouldn't play a part. It shouldn't be. It should just be about the well-being of people,
right,
reg-
right.
regardless of what they believe.
Like I was watching a debate the other day, and I don't know if this is accurate, but the Christian guy was throwing out there these stats, right? And it was on charity, like charitable
Hmm.
donations and taking care of, people.
Right.
And his point, which I mean, it, I'm stone cold atheist, so none of this is persuasive to me. But I'm saying he was making this point that Christians are much more charitable and more generous than, let's say, the secular world. And I don't know, I don't even know if that's true, but if it is, I think there's something maybe could be learned by the secular world.
Well, I think there is something there, but I think that's an a generalization. Because you don't need religion to get money from people. But it
No,
helps.
no.
But it helps.
Well, I think they're giving their money under threat, and there's a lot there.
Well, that's the stipulation. That you have to go along with the plan to give the money, right? In
Yeah,
secular
because
in a secular like way, you don't. There's no. You don't. There's nothing. There's no. You don't have to do that. It's just
right, and they're giving under compulsion. You know,
yeah.
like
Which
they're
is that really giving?
no, I don't think so, but it's
Well, they count it as giving. So
yeah, and they had some statistic, saying we give this much money. And
right, right.
supposedly the secular community, people that are secular, non-religious people, supposedly don't give that much. You know,
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the other thing too is anyone who walks into a church is now part of that denomination. They mark you off as that, and they add you to the tally, right? So they have inflated numbers. They get anybody walks into church is now anybody walks into Catholic church. Oh, you're now Catholic. Let's add them to the roster. So they have inflated numbers.
yeah, and it's a tremendous money making thing for sure.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean it's business. It's big business, is what it is.
Oh yeah.
So there's a lot of money flowing through.
Which doesn't seem. It seems like a contradiction when you think about it.
Oh, it's definitely a contradiction, even if you are a Christian, you know, looking at the teachings of Jesus,
Hmm.
just for the sake of looking at what he taught, there's definitely something wrong with that.
Yeah, I mean, That's why they have apologetics, so they can apologize all that away.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, it
So,
was nice meeting you, Lou. I'm gonna hit the road because I have some things I got to take care of.
yeah.
I'm actually part of a big atheist community here on YouTube, and
What's it called?
well, there's a whole bunch of them, and you have to just go and search them out. There's one that's called Atheist Experience.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm familiar with Atheist
Yeah,
Experience
check that one
because
out.
they've been around for like ever. Yeah.
Yeah, they've been around. They were on TV before they were on
Yes.
YouTube.
I actually, when I first started deconverting, Matt Dillahunty was someone that I watched a lot,
Great.
long
So you
time
know
ago.
him.
You
So
know?
you know Dillahunty. That's good. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I've been an atheist for 10, 12 years. And
Seth
I
Andrew.
don't, I'm not on the fence or anything.
So then you might know these people. Seth Andrew,
Oh yeah, him. I also watch him. You know,
Aaron
and
Ra. You know
yeah, no,
Aaron Ra.
I know all those guys, but now know
Well,
them
that's what I'm
personally.
talking about.
You know, I don't
That's what
know
I'm
them
talking about.
personally. I
Well,
just
I actually do graphic arts for everyone in the community. So I'm pretty connected. I've done graphic arts for hundreds of people in the community. Uh, my name is GeoSam. You can look my channel up. It's
yeah,
all
I will.
graphics. It's all graphics. That's all I do is graphics. I don't deal with religion because I have a graphics channel. But I'm in the community and I offer my skills for smaller channels. So
Well,
I
I'm a very small channel, but I would like to grow it. That is for sure.
great.
You
Yeah.
know, and if you could subscribe, that alone helps me. You know,
Oh yeah, of course.
and I got to try to get in the algorithm some way. You know, a little bit.
Yeah, I just subscribed.
Appreciate it. And I'll
So
look you
yeah.
up, Geo Sam. I'll subscribe to
Yeah,
your
look me up.
channel. So.
I actually do full branding from avatars to backgrounds, moving images, GIF images, intros, outros, you name it, I do it. I'm also part of another channel that airs every Saturday at 2 Eastern, and we just talk, just talk. It's called
What's
Delicious. It's called Delicious Danish.
yeah, that I'm not. I haven't seen them around yet.
Yeah, it's me. I don't run the show. It's a woman named Linda. She runs the show. She's Delicious Danish. She's from Denmark, and she runs the show. And there's another fella. His name is Amiga Nuts. He's our age, and he's from New York as well. And I'm from New York. And we just have a show. We bring people on. We talk about current events, everyday things. Everyday things that people talk about. And we don't try and focus on religion or politics, just everyday life and just real shit. You know what I mean?
Where are you from in New York? Last thing.
Well, I was born in Staten Island, uh, and I lived most of my life in Staten Island until I joined the service, and then I lived in Queens.
Queens.
Yeah, I lived in was it like four different parts of Queens. I'm a Bayside, Queens, Little Neck, uh, Sunnyside. That was my last. I lived in Sunnyside, Queens, and then I
I
came
was
over here.
I was Brooklyn and then Long Island.
Oh, Long Island. Yeah, I
That
know
was
that.
my stay in New York.
Or as they say, Long Island. Long
Long
Island.
Island. Anyway,
Long Island.
nice meeting you.
Yeah, man. Take care. Have a good one.
You too. So anyone who hasn't subscribed to my little channel, please do. And I want to get somewhere in this YouTube world algorithm, so I can get a little more people, that I can talk to. Appreciate every single one of you. Right. I got to go pretty soon, but I did want to ask the Jesus is King, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. If you want to step in and just chat quickly, I got like 10 minutes and then I got to go. Here's a link. I have a face for radio. I don't think you have to show your face, by the way. I don't think so. Okay. Yeah, you do need a microphone. But see, what I like about the Christians that pop in is I want to go slow and try to understand and try to get them to understand where I'm coming from. But honestly, I find Christians are mostly in just to persuade other people and to try to preach and, you know, try to turn someone's mind around. And I don't know that anyone can change my mind. Certainly, if I have evidence of a God, you know, that would be impressive to me. All right. I've never seen any what I call good evidence, but, you know, I respect what people may believe. But, you know, there's something just called preaching and trying to put other people down that I'm not that into because it just goes nowhere, you know. But I'm always welcome Christians in to talk, you know. I mean, I think Jesus is King of Kings and Lord of Lords and Tenebris Saint. You must have had a little conversation about scripture and different ways of maybe seeing it. All right. Love this conversation. Love the conversation. Ultimately, it's what you choose to believe. I mean, that's my experience with the Bible and all that. I mean, it's ultimately what you choose to believe. Right? And we believe different things for different reasons. All right. There's all types of emotional reasons and intellectual reasons and peer pressure reasons, social reasons, cultural reasons. So it's a complicated thing. Religion is complicated in that way. So Jesus is King of Kings and Lord of Lords. I will ask you this. Maybe you can type an answer. All right. You say you're here to share Jesus with others. Okay. Is there any reason that Jesus would have to be shared? I mean, is he capable of expressing himself? or does he need you to do it? Because I would think if Jesus is alive and he wants to communicate with me, he would be able to do that. The fact that he sends other people around to do this communication is not very strong. It's like a pretty weak thing. So why would Jesus send you and not just speak to me directly? Yeah, I'm familiar with the Great Commission, of course, right? But that doesn't mean that, I mean, he still should be able to talk to me directly. you know? And if Jesus has like the greatest built-in sales force that we've ever seen. It's like a sales force, because he said, go out and tell people. All right. So now, over time, he has millions and millions of people like you. Jesus is King of Kings. But it's not really necessary, is it? I've read the Bible a few times, yeah. And that's not talking to anybody. Okay. Talking to someone is completely different than reading about somebody. All right. You have a relationship probably with some people in real life, and you don't just read a book about them. You actually talk to them. So if Jesus is alive, I don't see any reason why he can't talk to me. All right. I don't see why he has to tell me to read a book. All right. About him. I know my girlfriend. She's coming home soon. All right. I don't read a book about her. All right. I communicate directly with her, and she communicates directly with me. I touch her. I feel her. I see her. I detect her. Okay. I know she's there. She's in the real world. She's not just floating around in my mind. Okay. I don't have a relationship with concepts in my brain. That's not a relationship. That's just thinking thoughts. So that'd be my answer to you. Yes, Doubting Thomas. Of course I've read that. So are you saying that Jesus wants to hide from everybody so that they can have faith? Oh my gosh. If I was your friend, Jesus is King of Kings, and you knew me personally, but then I told you, well, I'm never going to be here ever again, but I want you just to think about me from time to time, or maybe even all day long. And that will take the place of our actual relationship. I don't think that's what you mean, but yet that's what you have in Jesus. You have something, a person you read about, and you have a person you think about. Right? All right. And if you don't see a difference, it's impossible to explain that there is a difference if you don't see a difference, but I do. I know we have a Bible. Everybody knows we have a Bible. Okay. That's not a relationship. Okay. I can read a book about George Washington, but I don't have a personal relationship with George Washington. I can think about George Washington 24 hours a day, but I don't have a personal relationship with George Washington. I could review over and over, week in and week out, and I could sing songs to George Washington, but I don't have a personal relationship with George Washington. And that's what I see your relationship with Jesus as being. You sing songs about him, you think about him, and you read about him. And yet you'll turn around and say, you know him. Okay. And I mean, if that's what you call knowing somebody, good for you. You know, if that makes you feel good, good for you. All right. But that's not knowing someone in my world, because I live in the real world. So, does Jesus talk to you? All right. Not in the Bible, not reading about him. Does he talk to you? And not your own thoughts, because that's what I'm going to probably hear next. Well, I thought about him and I thought he was saying this. No, I mean, actually talk to you. I mean, does he actually talk to you? All right. Not reading about him, not thinking about him. Talk to you. Ah, I thought I was going to hear that. He doesn't really talk to you. He talks to you through the Bible. Okay. No, for me, Jesus is King and Lord of Lords. That's not enough for me. No. All right. It certainly is enough for a lot of people, right? So I'm not going to take that from you, but not for me. That's not enough. All right. You know, reading a book about a person is not knowing them in my world. The Holy Spirit, does he talk to you? Is he there with you all the time? Can you ask him to reveal something to you right now? Will he answer you? Okay, Jesus is King and Lord of Lords. On my right side, in my hand, I have something. You can't see it right now, but I'll show it to you. But I'd like you to ask either Jesus or the Holy Spirit. Ask him to tell you what I have in my hand. Can you do that? is either Jesus or the Holy Spirit telling you and talking to you now? Can you ask him to tell you what I have in my hand? Can you do that? Can you tell me what he says? Or he's not going to answer you. He's telling me you are lost. Well, he's not telling you what I have in my hand. You know why? Because if he actually told you what I have in my hand, I just might be closer to believing in him. But he wouldn't want to do that, would he? He'd rather tell you I'm lost rather than saving me. Because if he actually told you right now what was in my hand, that would be really persuasive to me. And it's not a big deal. I mean, you could even make a guess and you might be right. So ask the Holy Ghost, ask Jesus, just for the sake of my soul, that he would tell you what I'm holding in my hand and I could show you if it is correct or not. So it's all on me. I get it. The God isn't going to do anything, is he? Oh my gosh. Well, what we learned today, the God doesn't really want to talk. He doesn't really want to reveal what I have in my hand so that I can be persuaded to believe in him. That's not a big thing in his priority. All right. But Jesus is King and Lord of Lords. You do talk to him, but he's very careful what he tells you. All right. Oh my gosh. Do you have a reason that you think he will not tell you what's in my hand so that I can move forward and be very much persuaded by the power of this God? Is there a reason he doesn't want to tell you that? I mean, you are his friend, right? You have a personal relationship, right? Well, why doesn't he want to talk to you? Well, I guess I'm not important to him. Okay. Whatever. All right. Listen, guys, I got to go. All right. I thank you for coming in. Please subscribe, even if I disagree with you. All right. It's been a pleasure. Have a good night. Subscribe. Good night, guys.